All right, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about accusations that have been lobbed again at Errol Spence Jr. over steroid abuse. This in retaliation for the fact that I do believe that Oscar Valdez rather, tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and the mainstream media or people in the media have to find a way to attack somebody else to distract from the main problem in boxing, which is that there are really fighters being allowed to fight after they have been caught doping. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So there's a big controversy in boxing, and honestly, man, it's one of these things that made me want to it just makes you want to take a shower when you think about it. And it is that Oscar Valdez is going to be allowed to fight, even though he's tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs and violated the rules of VADA's rules of the VADA's, the WBC clean boxing program. Now, it's one thing for a guy to slip through and actually get to fight when he's on performance-enhancing drugs, because I think that we know that that happens on a regular basis, because you don't get caught the first time. Usually, you don't get caught the first time you do it. It's over after a series of times, and then you may get caught later down the road. At least that's the way that it happens with most things, right? It's not like every time anybody uses steroids they're going to get caught. So people, and I have to believe that this was an orchestrated effort from I don't know, some PR agency or somebody like that is really trying to soften the blow on Oscar Valdez's reputation, or soften the blow on the WBC's reputation. But in the line of talking about there being fighters that that have been on drugs, but we know that they didn't get caught, and I guess trying to make an argument that overall that steroid testing is just not efficient, and therefore the problem isn't with this situation with Oscar Valdez, it's the problem with all of boxing. So therefore, what we really need to do is just allow everybody to get on steroids, so that it'll be an even playing field, and we won't have to worry about one guy getting caught or the other guy getting caught. And it's absolutely ridiculous. It's an absolutely ridiculous argument that for some reason is really kicking up. Now, there's a lot of reasons for saying, that truly there are a lot of people that have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. There's a lot of people out there that have not tested that are on it. But to throw Errol Spence Jr.'s name in there around some corny internet rumor I just thought was really over the top, because people have started mentioning that Errol Spence Jr., that how they know that Errol Spence Jr. is on steroids because Errol Spence Jr. has, like puffy nipples. And, I make fun of the fact that people would even be looking at a man's chest like that. But, it's fair game to say that there are people out there that really look like, they're on steroids. But here's the thing. There's a difference between somebody doing something and breaking the law and not getting caught, because that happens everywhere. There are people that have all kind of heinous crimes that they get away with that go unsolved. People, there are people that rob banks and get away with robbing banks. People that, commit all kind of frauds and get away with the fraud, right? There is, and just likewise, and as far as people being on steroids, there's a lot of people on steroids that get away with it. But that's a different thing than saying that you need to get rid of, the legal apparatus around it, and saying, well, look, because there's people that we know that are getting away with murder, then we don't need the laws. We don't need laws out there to dissuade from that, because, so many people are getting away with it. It's just rampant. It's, it's in human nature. So, hey, let's go to the wild, wild west so that everybody can, do whatever they want. Nobody would accept that argument if you were talking about something outside of boxing. So the idea that people are putting this out, in boxing and using like the name of Errol Spence Jr. and saying, I've heard the same thing about several other fighters, right? Like the Charlo, people say that said it about the Charlos, right? Like, look, here's my thing. If somebody gets caught if somebody tests positive for steroids, that's when you know that they have been on steroids. There have been a lot of people that have accused Manny Pacquiao of being on steroids, and even though it is almost readily apparent that the man has been, at the very least you got to give him is that he's never been caught on steroids, so you just don't know. So even when I say, like, I know people will be like, Manny Pacquiao moved up 4 weight, I don't know how many weight, 8 weight classes. Nobody can do that unless they've had some type of chemical, help or whatever. There very well may be reason, to believe that. But until a man actually gets caught, you can't say that he did it because he didn't get caught. What you have with Oscar Valdez and what you have with Tyson Fury, what you have with Canelo Alvarez, is guys that actually have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs that have been allowed to fight. And if you really want to get rid of performance-enhancing drugs in the sport, then you've just got to get rid of the people that get caught, or you have to do something to them where it really does affect them in a major way, so that there is some reason not to do it. There'd be a whole lot more people running around shooting each other if they knew that they could get away with it 100% and never go to jail. That jail, whether or not, it's all kind of, stuff with that, like if, the judicial system and whether or not people are being treated or whatever. But there is, in minds of a lot of people, definitely a big dissuader that, you might be in that situation. But the way boxing has it right now is that if you're with a certain promoter, like a Top Rank, or you're with Golden Boy and you've got the political connections, that you can just get away with it, and you got marketing, you have the media people that are just going to run around and act like nothing like absolutely nothing happened in about 6 months. I mean, watch the treatment of what's going on with Oscar Valdez. I'm telling you, in a year, people will act and just run on and like Oscar Valdez didn't do anything. And that's the shame of the matter. If you're going to, give a pass to Oscar Valdez, you don't turn around and try to defend it by saying that, throwing everybody else under the bus at the same time and saying, well, he's just he's no different than anybody else. Yes, he is. He's much different than Errol Spence Jr. If Errol Spence Jr. was actually using performance-enhancing drugs, the difference between Oscar Valdez and Errol Spence Jr. is a big one. Errol Spence Jr. didn't get caught. You don't know for sure that he did it. Once you know for sure that somebody did it, then you become part of the problem because you're saying it's okay. And there's a whole lot of people that believe it is okay for their favorite fighter to use performance-enhancing drugs and is 100% okay with it. But if somebody else's fighter got caught with it, then they want to throw the book at him. I've tried my best to stay consistent, and I would say it. If Errol Spence Jr. had tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs or something like that, I would say, hey man, the dude probably shouldn't be allowed to fight because that's what it is. I'm not a big fan of giving people suspensions like 6-month suspensions, especially when they're multimillionaires and can afford, just to sit out for a couple months like they did with Canelo Alvarez. When Canelo Alvarez tested positive, all he did was sit out. Like I think they might have postponed the fight. Right, they were supposed to fight in September and November. He winds up fighting in November. November, and then another quick fight 3 months later and made the money right back. But, all in all, man, throwing Errol Spence Jr. under the bus or other fighters under the bus just to, save Oscar Valdez and then claim that we just needed to be, open season on steroids. And how does open season on steroids benefit boxing at all when it'll become like bodybuilding? And people may not realize this, but once, it really became known that these guys were all on drugs and their physiques and all that were essentially fake, a lot of interest died in boxing. It died in bodybuilding. And I think that that's because people really do, at the end of the day, really want to see a real athlete and what a real athlete is capable of, and not wonder whether or not this is just some, thing that's coming out of a lab. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.